Avoidance kills growth, discomfort expands it. It's one of those truths that sounds simple, but most people spend their entire lives running from it. We're wired to dodge pain, to sidestep embarrassment, to keep our emotional skin from getting scraped. And sure, that keeps you safe, but it also keeps you exactly where you are. Avoidance is the silent killer of progress. It's like trying to build a rocket without ever leaving the lab because you're afraid of an explosion. You don't get liftoff without risk. You don't get growth without friction. The problem is that comfort feels like progress. You can convince yourself that you're planning, preparing, or waiting for the right time, when in reality, you're just circling the runway with the brakes on. Discomfort, on the other hand, doesn't let you lie to yourself. The moment you're in it, you feel the stakes. You feel the pulse quicken, the mind sharpen, the edges of your capacity stretch. That's where actual expansion happens, at the point where you're tempted to turn back, but you don't. I've learned that discomfort is not a signal to retreat. It's a signpost that you're on the right path. Every big leap in my life came with a knot in my stomach walking into rooms where I didn't belong yet, pitching ideas people thought were insane, standing up to say, I think we can do this differently, when everyone else was invested in doing it the old way. In those moments, I wasn't confident. I wasn't certain. But I was moving forward, and that's the difference between stagnation and growth. Avoidance keeps you locked in a feedback loop of safety and sameness. You might feel stable, but you're actually shrinking. Your resilience, your creativity, your courage all atrophy from disuse. Discomfort, though, it forces adaptation. Step into a hard conversation you've been dreading, and suddenly you're better at communicating under pressure. Take on a project you're not ready for, and you discover skills you didn't know you had. Go to the wedding of someone you thought you couldn't face, and you learn that you can stand in the fire and still keep your shape. People ask, but what if I fail? That's the wrong question. You will fail. You should fail. Because failure inside discomfort isn't a dead end, it's an accelerant. It burns away illusions and shortcuts the learning curve. The real danger isn't failing, it's never stepping far enough outside your bubble to find out what you're capable of. Avoidance is the slow death of potential. Discomfort is the forge where potential turns into ability. You can stay safe and small, or you can get uncomfortable and grow. Those are the only two options. And the sooner you choose the second, the faster your life stops feeling like a repetition of yesterday and starts feeling like a launch sequence. Facing your past without fear is the gateway to owning your future. Most people think the past is a locked room, something you leave behind, never open, never look at. But the truth is, it's not locked at all. It's sitting there, wide open, and whether you step inside or not determines how much power it holds over you. If you avoid it, the past becomes a shadow that follows you into every decision. If you face it, you take the controls back. Your past isn't just a string of memories. It's a living system of cause and effect that still shapes who you are and how you move through the world. Every choice you make today is running through code you wrote years ago. Some of that code is solid. Some of it is corrupted. The only way to debug it is to confront it head on. And yes, that's uncomfortable. But so is being trapped by patterns you don't even realize are running you. I've walked into moments I thought would crush me, old relationships that ended badly, decisions I regretted, failures that still carried the taste of humiliation. The instinct was always to look away, to bury it under new achievements or distractions. But burying is not the same as erasing. You can't outrun a ghost you refuse to face. The moment you turn toward it, something shifts. You stop reacting from old wounds and start acting from new clarity. When you face your past without fear, you start to see it differently. The pain that once felt like a dead end reveals itself as a blueprint. The heartbreak that seemed to waste years becomes the foundation for better judgment. The failures you wanted to forget turn into data points, valuable inputs for building what comes next. It's not about rewriting history. It's about reinterpreting it so it stops being a weight and starts being fuel. This isn't just personal. It applies to teams, companies, even entire societies. When people refuse to look back honestly, they repeat the same mistakes at scale. But when they confront their history, when they actually dissect what went wrong, they can design a future that isn't just different, but exponentially better. The catch: you can't face the past halfway. You can't edit the parts you look at to make yourself comfortable. You have to walk straight into the raw, unfiltered truth and accept what you find there. That's where the fear is, and that's where the freedom is. Because once you've stood in that place and survived it, the future stops feeling like a gamble and starts feeling like a build. Owning your future isn't about predicting what's coming. It's about making sure the past isn't quietly steering your ship. Face it. Break it down. Learn from it. Only then do you get to design what comes next on your terms, not as a sequel to a story you never wanted to keep telling. Gratitude can coexist with pain when you choose the right perspective. Most people treat those two emotions like oil and water, as if you have to wait for the pain to disappear before you can feel grateful. But that's not how real life works. In the real world, progress often means holding both at the same time. It's learning to say, yes, this hurt, and in the same breath, yes, I'm still thankful it happened. That's not delusion, that's evolution. Pain is proof you engage with life. You cared enough to risk something. You put yourself in a position where the outcome mattered. Gratitude is the signal that even in the middle of loss, you recognize there was value in the experience. Together, they're like opposite ends of a battery. Tension between them creates energy. That energy is what moves you forward instead of keeping you stuck in regret. Think about a failure you still carry. Most people see only the damage. But if you step back, there's almost always something else hiding in the wreckage. A lesson, a skill, a shift in perspective you wouldn't have gained without going through it. Gratitude doesn't erase the pain, but it reframes it. Instead of being the reason you stalled, it becomes the reason you accelerated. When my own life has been cracked open, by loss, by betrayal, by my own mistakes, the instinct was to harden, to make the story one of pure damage. But every time I've looked deeper, I've found something worth keeping. Clarity about what matters, better filters for who I let close, sharper instincts about when to push and when to walk away. Those things came at a cost, but they're priceless. Gratitude lets you acknowledge that cost without letting it bankrupt you emotionally. The trick is perspective. Perspective is the lever that lets you hold both gratitude and pain without breaking under the strain. If you only zoom in on the hurt, you'll drown in it. If you zoom out, you start to see the pattern. The way the hardest moments often connect to breakthroughs you couldn't have engineered any other way. That's when the pain stops feeling like an enemy and starts feeling like an unlikely teacher. This isn't about romanticizing struggle. Pain for the sake of pain is pointless. But pain that teaches, shapes, and strengthens, that's worth honoring. Gratitude is how you lock in that value. It's the mental process of saying, this chapter was brutal, but it gave me something I wouldn't trade. That doesn't make the hurt vanish, but it stops it from defining the whole story. In the end, gratitude and pain aren't opposites. They're partners. One keeps you human. The other keeps you wise. And if you can hold them together without letting either one dominate, you'll find that the hardest moments in your life can still be the most valuable ones. Closure isn't always final. It's sometimes the ability to revisit without damage. We've been sold the idea that closure is a clean break, a permanent seal over the past, a line you cross and never step back over. That's a nice story, but reality is messier. Closure isn't the absence of connection. It's the transformation of it. It's when the past stops being a live wire you can't touch and becomes something you can handle without getting burned. Most people chase closure like it's a finish line. They want that cinematic moment where they walk away, never look back, and feel nothing. But that's not how memory works. The people, places, and events that shaped you, especially the painful ones, don't vanish. They become part of your operating system. The real test isn't whether you can cut them out, it's whether you can revisit them without the old emotions hijacking you. I've stepped into situations I thought I had moved past, only to realize I was still wired to react. A voice, a place, even a scent could pull me right back into the heat of the moment. That's not failure. That's a sign the wound never fully healed. The work of closure isn't just walking away. It's re-entering the scene in your mind or in reality and finding you can stand there without losing your balance. It's like walking into a room where you once nearly drowned and realizing you can breathe just fine. The water's still there. The memory of choking is still there. But you're not in danger anymore. That's closure, not the erasure of the event, but the end of its power to control you. This kind of closure takes more than time. Time alone doesn't heal. It just dulls. What heals is the act of confronting what happened with a different version of yourself. You have to do the work, unpack the story, process the emotions, see the lessons. Only then can you return without reopening the wound. It's the difference between avoiding the past and integrating it. Avoidance looks like strength, but is really fragility in disguise. You're just keeping the door locked because you know what's behind it can still hurt you. Integration is when you can unlock the door, walk inside, and know you're safe because you've built yourself into someone who can handle it. When you reach that point, you realize closure was never about distance. It was about capacity. The ability to revisit without damage means you've recoded the experience. It's no longer a live trigger. It's a chapter you can read without getting pulled back into it. And that's freedom. Freedom not from the memory, but from the grip it once had on you. Strength is not armor, it's vulnerability in motion. We're taught to think of strength as a wall, impenetrable, unshakable, something that keeps everything out. The problem is walls don't just keep out the bad, they keep out the good. They trap you inside your own defenses. Real strength isn't about being untouchable. It's about moving forward even when you can be touched, even when you can be hurt. Armor is static. It's designed to absorb impact by staying still, by resisting. Vulnerability, on the other hand, is dynamic. It's the choice to walk into the unknown without guarantees, to step into situations that could break you and trust that even if they do, you can rebuild. That's why vulnerability in motion is strength, because it requires courage and adaptability at the same time. Think about it. When you hide behind armor, you might survive, but you don't evolve. You don't form deep connections. You don't innovate. You just endure. Vulnerability, however, forces you to interact with reality as it is, not as you wish it were. It pushes you to take risks, admit weaknesses, and be open to feedback even when it's uncomfortable. That openness is where real progress lies. Some of the strongest moments in my life didn't feel like strength at all in the moment. They felt like standing on a cliff with no parachute, launching an idea I wasn't sure would work, having a conversation I knew could go badly, showing up somewhere I didn't feel entirely welcome. I felt exposed, but each time that exposure became the reason I grew. Armor might have protected me from that discomfort, but it also would have protected me from the growth that came with it. The irony is, vulnerability isn't the opposite of strength, it's what creates it. When you're willing to risk being seen, being wrong, or even being hurt, you're building resilience in real time. You're learning how to adapt on the fly, how to navigate pressure without hiding behind a shield. And that resilience compounds. It becomes part of who you are. Of course, vulnerability doesn't mean recklessness. It's not about oversharing or walking blindly into every situation. It's about calculated exposure, knowing the risk, feeling the fear, and stepping forward anyway. That's where the movement comes in. Strength in motion is about progress, not perfection. You don't wait until you feel invincible. You move while you're still human, still unsure, still open to the possibility of failure. Armor might win a battle, but vulnerability in motion wins the war. Because battles are about survival and wars, at least the ones worth fighting, are about transformation. And you can't transform from behind a wall. You have to step out, risk the hit, and keep moving. That's where strength stops being a performance and starts being real. Saying yes to challenges rewires your limits. Most people think limits are fixed, like there's a ceiling to what they can handle, and the smartest move is to work comfortably underneath it. But limits aren't fixed, they're programmable. And every time you say yes to a challenge that scares you, you're running a new piece of code into your system. That code changes your capacity. It shifts what you believe you can take on, which in turn changes what's actually possible for you. The problem is, our brains are conservative by default. They're designed to protect us, to keep energy in reserve, to avoid unnecessary risk. That's great for survival, terrible for progress. If you only say yes to the things you're sure you can handle, you never discover the hidden bandwidth you actually have. You keep operating at last year's settings, and last year's settings can't get you to next year's breakthroughs. Every major leap I've made came disguised as something I wasn't ready for. Projects I thought were too complex. Opportunities I felt underqualified for, conversations I was afraid to have. My instinct was to say no, to wait until I felt prepared. But prepared is a myth. You're never ready for the next level until you're already in it. By saying yes before I felt ready, I forced my brain and body to adapt. And they did, because they had to. Challenges are pressure chambers. They compress time. They force accelerated learning. You take on something bigger than you, and suddenly you're solving problems you didn't know how to approach a week ago. You're using muscles, mental, emotional, even physical, that you didn't know you had. That's the rewiring. Every new challenge stretches the edge of what you think is possible and locks that new edge in as your baseline. Saying yes doesn't mean you'll win every time. In fact, you'll lose often. But even in loss, the wiring changes. You start to normalize the discomfort of being out of your depth. You stop panicking when you don't know the answer right away. You develop an instinct for navigating uncertainty, and that instinct is worth more than any single victory. If you avoid challenges, your limits shrink. If you accept them, your limits expand. It's that simple. The people who operate at the highest levels aren't the ones born with the biggest capacity. They're the ones who keep saying yes to things that scare them until what once scared them feels like home. Saying yes is a trigger. It's the moment you decide that growth is worth the risk of failure, that the discomfort of the unknown is more valuable than the safety of the familiar. And once you start rewiring your limits this way, You realize there's no ceiling, only the next challenge waiting for another yes. Grace is simply courage dressed in humility. We tend to think of grace as softness, as something delicate and quiet, almost passive. But real grace isn't weak. It's built on the same foundation as courage, the willingness to step into hard situations when you could walk away. The difference is that courage often roars, while grace moves without demanding attention. Grace is courage that doesn't need the spotlight, courage that chooses composure over conquest. Courage on its own is about action, standing up, pushing through, refusing to back down. But when you layer humility over it, the motive shifts. It's no longer about proving you're strong. It's about doing what's right without the need to dominate. Grace shows up in how you handle victory, how you respond to loss, and how you treat people who can't do anything for you in return. I've seen people win battles and lose all respect because they couldn't handle their moment with grace. They had the courage to fight, but not the humility to respect the other side. And I've seen the opposite. People who walked into tense situations, made their stand, and then left the room in a way that even their opponents admired. That's the power of grace. It's not just about winning the fight, it's about elevating the space around you while you fight it. Grace doesn't mean avoiding conflict. It means entering it with a clear head and a steady hand. It's the ability to hold your ground without grinding the other person into it. It's recognizing that your strength isn't diminished by empathy, that you can be firm without being cruel, and decisive without being arrogant. That balance is hard, which is why it's rare. Humility is the anchor here. Without humility, courage turns into ego. With humility, courage becomes sustainable. You're not fighting for the sake of being right. You're fighting because something matters enough to risk yourself for it. And when you win, or when you lose, you walk away without the need to inflate your victory or disguise your defeat. You know who you are, and you don't need external validation to prove it. The reason grace is so powerful is because it disarms people. Courage might command respect, but grace earns it. It leaves a mark that outlasts the moment. People remember not just what you did, but how you did it. And in many cases, that how matters more. So yes, grace wears humility like armor, but it's not the kind of armor that keeps the world out. It's the kind that allows you to walk through it without losing yourself. It's a choice to be steady when you could be sharp, to be composed when you could be chaotic. That choice doesn't make you less courageous. It makes your courage worth following. In the end, grace isn't about lowering your voice or softening your presence. It's about elevating your impact. Courage might get you into the arena, but grace determines the legacy you leave behind when you walk out. It's the proof that true strength isn't measured by how hard you hit, but by how well you carry yourself when the hitting stops. When courage moves with humility, it doesn't just change outcomes. It changes people. And that, more than any victory, is the kind of win that lasts.